What kind of movie could have taken a president of the United States to the cinema? It can only be Do the Right Thing. The real-life lessons in this film are so enormous that world leaders, including President Barack Obama, had to take his then-fiancée, Michelle Obama, on a movie date just to glean from its lessons. This means there's more to this movie than meets the eye. Here are 20 weird facts about Do the Right Thing that you probably didn't know about. Number 20. It was inspired by a real-life murder. Though Do the Right Thing is not a fictional story, it's rooted in painful, real-world events, particularly the tragic demise of Eleanor Bumpurs, an elderly black woman murdered by NYPD officers in 1984. This real-life incident and others like it served as a creative and emotional catalyst for Spike Lee when crafting the story. Eleanor Bumpurs was a 66-year-old grandmother living in public housing in the Bronx, suffering from mental illness. In October 1984, city housing authorities decided to evict her over unpaid rent of just over $400. Bumpurs resisted the eviction, reportedly holding a kitchen knife. In response, the NYPD sent in an emergency services unit. While they were confronting her, an officer shot her twice with a 12-gauge shotgun, murdering her in her apartment. The image of an elderly black woman being executed in such a brutal fashion shook New York City and became a national symbol of excessive force and racialized policing. In his late 20s, Spike Lee was deeply disturbed by the story. He felt the city's response was cold and bureaucratic, and the media portrayal dehumanized Bumpurs, painting her more as a threat than a victim. This moment and other unjust incidents formed the emotional landscape from which Do the Right Thing grew. In the film, this inspiration manifests most clearly in the demise of Radio Raheem, a towering black man choked to death by police during a confrontation at Sal's Pizzeria. Raheem, like Bumpurs, becomes a casualty of an overreaction, treated not as a human being but as a threat to be neutralized. Spike Lee didn't name Eleanor Bumpurs directly in the film, but her spirit and the injustice surrounding her passing linger heavily in the storytelling. Number 19. The love and hate rings were a homage to an old film.
That's the hype! Newest, latest. Let me tell you the story of right hand, left hand. It's a tale of good and evil.
Not only was Do the Right Thing inspired by a real-life event, but the director also honored the legacy of an old movie in the film. One of the most iconic moments in Do the Right Thing is Radio Raheem's monologue about his brass knuckle rings, one hand adorned with love, the other with hate. Many viewers don't realize that this unforgettable scene was a deliberate homage to Charles Laughton's 1955 classic, The Night of the Hunter. In The Night of the Hunter, the villainous preacher Reverend Harry Powell, played by Robert Mitchum, wears similar rings, love on one hand and hate on the other. He delivers a famous speech about the eternal struggle between good and evil. He also acts out a mock wrestling match with his fingers, illustrating how love and hate battle for control of the human heart. Spike Lee, who graduated from film school, was well aware of The Night of the Hunter and its cultural weight, so he wanted to recontextualize the symbolism of the rings for a new, urban, black, and politically charged generation. He handed the concept to Radio Raheem and let him give it new meaning. When Bill Nunn delivers the monologue in Do the Right Thing, it's both an homage and a reinvention. His version has a rhythm, attitude, and a poetic swagger that is uniquely his own. The speech was not just about good and evil in a moral vacuum. It became a commentary on black survival, the constant push-pull between love and hate in a world that provokes anger and suppresses compassion. Number 18. The riot scene was filmed. In one take, the riot scene in Do the Right Thing is arguably one of the most emotionally explosive moments in Spike Lee's filmography and American cinema. It comes after the passing of Radio Raheem, who is choked to death by police right in front of the neighborhood. The crowd's sorrow quickly turns to fury. In an instant, Sal's Pizzeria, once a neighborhood fixture, is destroyed. It will surprise you that this staggering and emotional scene was filmed in a single take. This wasn't just a technical stunt. It was a bold, calculated, creative decision to preserve the moment's rawness, tension, and unfiltered emotional honesty. Stopping and resetting cameras, reshooting angles, or getting a better take would have risked diluting the authenticity of that eruption. From a production standpoint, setting up a scene with fire, broken glass, bricks, physical confrontation, and dozens of extras, and attempting to capture it all in one uninterrupted flow requires near-perfect choreography. The destruction of Sal's Pizzeria was not simulated in pieces. They smashed up the set, which had been an entirely constructed and dressed location. According to crew members, they only had one chance to get it right. The set couldn't be magically put back together if something went wrong. That meant hours of rehearsal to coordinate the camera's movements with the actors' pacing and reactions. When the take wrapped, there was a moment of stunned silence on set. The cast and crew knew something powerful had just been captured. Spike Lee's decision to shoot the riot in one take proved artistic and political. That raw immediacy is part of what makes Do the Right Thing so unforgettable. Number 17. The entire film was shot on a single block. While many viewers see Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing telling the story of a neighborhood, they never realize that the movie became the neighborhood. The entire movie was filmed on a single block in Brooklyn, Stuyvesant Avenue between Lexington and Quincy in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood. Spike Lee and his production team didn't just show up and shoot. They transformed the entire block into a cinematic stage, a living, breathing canvas reflecting inner-city Brooklyn's culture, heat, tension, and energy. At the time, the block wasn't camera-ready. Like many parts of Brooklyn during the late 80s, it still had its share of urban decay. However, rather than use existing storefronts, Lee had his team build key sets from scratch. This included the now iconic Sal's Famous Pizzeria, the Korean-owned grocery store, and other colorful elements that made the block feel like a self-contained world. These structures were fully functioning from the outside, but inside, they were set design magic designed to accommodate lighting rigs and camera setups. Filming on one block also offered incredible control. Since the set was sealed off, Lee and his team could shoot scenes out of order, maintain continuity, and reuse camera setups from different angles. To this day, the block remains a pilgrimage site for film fans. Though Sal's Pizzeria and the other sets were dismantled after filming wrapped, the bones of the block remain the same. Number 16. The heat was real. In Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee designed the film so that every frame radiated heat, not just in temperature but in social intensity. Many viewers don't realize that the sweat, discomfort, and sticky tension felt by the characters on screen weren't just great acting or clever sound design. It was authentic in many ways. Filming took place in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn during the summer of 1988, and New York was experiencing a sweltering heat wave. Daytime temperatures soared into the high 90s and sometimes broke 100 degrees Fahrenheit, equal to 38 degrees Celsius. Imagine that with the heavy wardrobe, hot lights, and layers of makeup worn by the cast. This means that the cast and crew were baking during production. Actors often had to wear the same sweat-drenched clothes for hours to maintain continuity, and makeup artists constantly blotted, patted, and sprayed water bottles to keep faces from dripping off the screen. This is why Spike Lee wanted the audience to feel the heat as well. Behind the scenes, the oppressive heat took a toll. There were cases of heat exhaustion, particularly among the crew who had to wear heavy belts with gear or who worked long hours rigging lights and cameras. Hydration stations were set up across the set, and cast members took breaks in shaded areas between takes. Hence, the viewers also felt the heat in the film. Number 15. Rosie Perez was discovered in a nightclub. The opening sequence is one of the most iconic moments in Do the Right. It is a complex hitting blend of raw attitude and kinetic dance. The woman in the center of it all is no other than Rosie Perez, wearing red and dancing with a fierce and unapologetic energy that burns through the screen. Rosie Perez, who played Tina, was not a trained actress when Spike Lee found her. She wasn't even pursuing an acting career. At the time, she was a student and part-time choreographer in Los Angeles, known in underground circles for her dynamic dance moves. One night, she went to a popular nightclub called the Funky Reggae, a hotspot for music lovers and hip-hop heads. There happened to be a butt-shaking contest that evening taking place on stage. Perez, encouraged by friends and carried by the music, got up on stage and started dancing. Among the crowd that night was Spike Lee, who had been visiting Los Angeles and stopped by the club. As he watched Rosie move with an intensity that matched the very spirit of the film he was planning, he knew he had found his Tina instantly. Lee approached Perez after the contest and told her, "You need to be in my next movie." At first, she thought he was joking. She had no professional acting experience, and transitioning from dance to film seemed far-fetched. However, Lee persisted. During the audition process, Rosie remained skeptical. She didn't see herself as a movie person and wasn't interested in changing who she was to fit a Hollywood mold. The result is a character that feels unpolished but authentic, full of love, frustration, and sensuality, especially in her scenes with Mookie, whom Lee himself played. Rosie Perez would have a prosperous career in acting and activism, but it all started with that spontaneous nightclub moment. One night of uninhibited dancing, she caught the eye of a director who knew authenticity when he saw it. Number 14. Radio Raheem's boombox was custom-built. Few props in cinematic history are as iconic and loud as Radio Raheem's boombox in Do the Right Thing. It didn't just play music, it announced his presence, challenged the silence, and dominated the screen with a booming defiance. However, many film fans don't know this monstrous audio machinery was custom-built. Radio Raheem, played by the towering Bill Nunn, isn't a character who speaks much, but he commands attention. His boombox is more than a sound system. It extends his identity. Whenever he appears on screen, Fight the Power by Public Enemy pulses from the speakers at a volume that shakes the block. The box is almost always on and loud, and it's a declaration that he cannot and will not be ignored. Spike Lee and his production team realized early in pre-production that a standard consumer boombox wouldn't cut it. It had to be big, heavy, and most importantly, loud enough to drown out the entire neighborhood. The sound team and prop designers worked together to construct a custom boombox, reinforced with internal components that could blast music louder than any typical box. This allowed for authentic audio interaction with the environment and cast. When Sal eventually destroys the boombox, it's not just a destruction of property, it's a symbolic erasure. It's the silencing of Raheem's voice. That moment becomes the point of no return, leading directly to Raheem's tragic demise at the hands of police and the violent unrest that follows. Number 13. Bill Nunn got blisters from the boombox. You have heard about the iconic boombox of Radio Raheem, but do you know who Radio Raheem is? He's one of the most unforgettable characters in Do the Right Thing. He's tall, imposing, and silent for much of the film. Raheem communicates not with words, but through sheer presence, and most of all, through his massive boombox blasting Public Enemy's Fight the Power. The boombox is so iconic that it's practically a character itself. However, audiences didn't see the physical toll it took on actor Bill Nunn, who carried that real working prop for hours in the brutal summer heat of Brooklyn, paying a price for it. He had blisters on his hands and shoulders from hauling the beast around the set. Spike Lee was adamant that Radio Raheem needed a commanding, memorable aura. That meant his boombox had to match his presence. The crew built a custom, oversized boombox to be loud and visually dominating. However, the prop came with complications. Unlike today's lightweight Bluetooth speakers, this boombox was heavy, constructed from solid material, and filled with audio gear to project authentic sound. In many scenes, the music you hear wasn't added in post-production but played live from the box. That required real amplification and real weight. Bill Nunn had to carry that thing over his shoulder through take after take under the blistering Brooklyn sun. According to members of the crew, after just a few days of shooting, red welts formed on Nunn's shoulder from the friction of the heavy strap. His hands, too, suffered from gripping the rugged plastic handles for extended periods, yet Nunn never complained. He understood that Raheem's physicality was a key part of his presence. In many ways, the physical burden Nunn carried was symbolic. The scars and blisters became part of the performance, even if the audience never saw them. Number 12. Fight the Power was commissioned for the film. Before Do the Right Thing, Fight the Power didn't exist. The now legendary anthem was explicitly crafted for the film, making it one of the rare cases where a song becomes so intertwined with a movie's identity that the two are practically inseparable. Here is what happened. In the early stages of production, Spike Lee knew his film needed a musical backbone, a song that would ignite the story's message, echo its rage, and reflect its characters' energy and frustration. To achieve this, Public Enemy was the first group that came to mind. At the time, Public Enemy was already known for its aggressive beats and confrontational lyrics. Spike Lee approached Chuck D, the group's frontman and primary lyricist, and said, "I need an anthem, something to punch through the film." He invited Chuck to a rough early footage screening and explained what he was trying to accomplish with Do the Right Thing. Chuck D got to work inspired by the footage and Spike's vision. The result was a militant and confrontational track with lines referencing black empowerment, systemic injustice, and civil disobedience. The song was an unfiltered protest wrapped in a beat that hit like a sledgehammer. When Spike heard the track for the first time, he knew it was perfect. He boldly decided to feature it throughout the entire movie. Fight the Power is the first thing you hear, blasting as Rosie Perez dances furiously in the opening credits. Then it re-emerges each time Radio Raheem appears, always playing from his massive boombox like a personal battle hymn. The song's integration into the film is deliberate and layered. Number 11. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee were a real-life couple. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, who portrayed the quarrelsome but deeply connected pair, weren't just playing a couple, they were one. Married since 1948, they had spent decades performing together on stage and screen, working side by side as activists with icons like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Spike Lee, who grew up revering them, specifically wrote the roles of DeMayer and Mother Sister with them in mind. He later said casting them was one of the greatest honors of his career. He wasn't bringing in big names but embedding real black history into his film. With their legacy, Davis and Dee brought gravitas and generational weight to a story centered around youth, heat, and impulsiveness. Their characters mirror many of the complexities of long-term love and survival in a marginalized community. On the surface, they appear to be foils, but beneath the bickering lies an unspoken history of shared loss, struggle, and enduring companionship. That emotional depth couldn't have been faked. In several scenes, their real-life intimacy slips through. Their scenes offer tenderness and reflection in a film overflowing with tension and anger. Off-screen, Davis and Dee viewed their participation in the film as part of a broader mission. They believed Do the Right Thing was a wake-up call to America and were proud to lend their voices. Number 10. Danny Aiello improvised the famous Pino speech. In a film full of tension, contradictions, and explosive dialogue, one moment in Do the Right Thing stands out. Sal, played by the late Danny Aiello, is questioned about his loyalty to his Italian heritage and his love for certain black celebrities. The now famous exchange where Sal justifies his wall of fame despite running a business in a predominantly black neighborhood is one of the film's most intellectually charged moments. What is more fascinating is that Danny Aiello improvised much of that speech. In one of the scenes, Sal is confronted by his son Pino alongside Mookie, the quietly simmering delivery guy played by Spike Lee. When Mookie asks why Sal has no black figures on his pizzeria wall, Pino jumps in with sarcastic, racist remarks. However, Sal takes a moment to think, and then, in a moment of raw reflection, he said, "Pino, they grew up on my food. I'm proud of that." That line was not in the original script. Aiello, a veteran actor with roots in theater and improvisation, felt strongly that Sal wasn't just a one-dimensional character. So during filming, Aiello asked Spike Lee if he could explore the scene more freely. Lee, trusting Aiello's instincts, gave him the green light. What followed was a partially improvised monologue that brought a new layer of complexity to Sal. He wasn't just a prejudiced store owner, but a man clinging to his identity, frustrated by the changes around him. The scene has since become one of the most studied in film classes, cited as an example of how improvisation, when done well, can deepen narrative complexity. Number 9. Samuel L. Jackson's role was nearly cut. long before he was a household name, Samuel L. Jackson played a role in Do the Right Thing that was nearly erased from the final film. Many don't realize that his role as Mr. Senor Love Daddy was almost left out of the film entirely. It took a shift in vision and Jackson's unmistakable presence to turn the character into one of the movie's quiet strengths. Mr. Senor Love Daddy is the neighborhood's radio DJ, a man perched in a small booth watching the world spin outside his window, offering commentary, music, humor, and subtle warnings to the community. He opens the film with an energetic wake-up call saying, "Time to get up you wake." However, when Spike Lee first wrote the script, this character was barely more than a narrator with a few throwaway lines. Much of Mr. Senor Love Daddy's scenes didn't seem essential to the central conflict in early cuts. However, Samuel L. Jackson brought something to the role during production that changed everything. He wasn't just a voice, he became the conscious observer of the block, someone who sees everything but stays removed enough to comment on it. Spike Lee realized that Jackson's performance gave the film a kind of narrative glue. He watches, warns, and reflects. Lee deliberately expanded Love Daddy's screen time during the final editing phase. He restructured parts of the film to bring him back in small but essential beats. Love Daddy proves that no role is too small to be meaningful in Spike Lee's world. Number 8. Martin Lawrence made his film debut. Before Martin Lawrence became anything in the movie industry, he was just a young, hungry performer trying to catch a break. That break came in 1989 when he made his big screen debut in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. He was just one of the kids on the corner, but that little role became the launch pad for one of Hollywood's most successful comedic careers. In Do the Right Thing, Lawrence plays C, one of a trio of local teens who spend their day chilling on the block, trading jokes, observing the neighborhood drama, and offering a running commentary on the action. The trio wasn't central to the story, but they served as a crucial street-level chorus, reflecting the views of young, urban black men trying to make sense of their place in a complicated world. At the time, Martin Lawrence was in his early 20s. Born in Germany and raised in Maryland, he moved to New York to pursue stand-up comedy. He started performing at clubs like the Improv and the Comic Strip, where he quickly gained attention for his sharp wit and infectious energy. During this period, he met Spike Lee, who was casting relatively unknown young black talent for Do the Right Thing. Despite having limited screen time, Lawrence made every moment count. His delivery, body language, and street-brilliant sarcasm gave his character a presence far bigger than the script required. Though Lawrence didn't have a major arc, his work caught attention in Hollywood. Do the Right Thing served as a calling card, and just a few years later, he landed his show. Number 7. Rosie Perez almost quit. On the first day of filming, the opening credits of Do the Right Thing are unforgettable. Rosie Perez plays a young woman named Tina, who dances with fierce energy, attitude, and raw defiance to the energetic Fight the Power. Clad in boxing gear and streetwear, her moves blur the line between seduction, anger, and protest. Many viewers don't know that this now iconic sequence nearly ended before Rosie Perez's involvement in the film. When she was cast, Rosie Perez was a complete newcomer. It is no longer news that Spike Lee discovered her while dancing at a Los Angeles nightclub. Her presence, charisma, movement, and Brooklyn edge immediately struck him. He invited her to audition, and though she had no formal acting experience, she landed the role of Tina, Mookie's fiery girlfriend. But on the very first day of shooting, tensions rose. Spike had decided that Rosie's introduction would be the opening credits sequence, a bold dance solo to Fight the Power. However, Rosie had serious reservations. She didn't understand how the sequence fit the story, and more importantly, she was deeply uncomfortable with how Spike wanted it shot, especially some of the more suggestive choreography and close-ups. To Rosie, the dance felt more sexualized than political. She later described feeling embarrassed and vulnerable. She feared the scene would portray her in a way she hadn't signed up for. Rosie was moments away from walking off set, ready to quit the film entirely before her first real scene had been completed. Spike Lee, for his part, argued that the scene was vital to the energy and attitude of the movie, and that it was about power, not objectification. Eventually, after intense conversations, Rosie agreed to stay and perform the dance. However, her relationship with Spike remained complicated throughout the shoot. The resulting sequence is one of film history's most visually striking intros. In hindsight, Rosie Perez has said she's proud of her work on the film, but she still holds complicated feelings about how it began. Number 6. President Obama took Michelle to see it. On their first date, people often imagine candlelit dinners or strolls through museums when they think of presidential love stories. However, for Barack and Michelle Obama, the beginning of their now iconic relationship was rooted in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. Yes, the then future president of the United States took Michelle Robinson to see the film on their first date. Michelle Robinson, who was 3 years younger, was assigned as his mentor at the firm. Though she initially resisted his flirtations and worried about dating someone she was supervising, Barack's charm, intellect, and calm confidence eventually made her fall in love with him. Their first date was a full day in Chicago. They went for ice cream, visited the Art Institute, walked through the city, and finally, he took her to see Do the Right Thing. Imagine two young, ambitious black professionals watching one of the most emotionally charged and politically daring films ever made about race in America. They watched Radio Raheem die, the community erupt, Mookie throw the trash can, and the screen flash between quotes from Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. This film left a lasting mark on their lives. Years later, both Obamas spoke about that date with fondness and reflection. Barack said the film was the perfect choice. It sparked deep conversation, challenged them both intellectually, and set the tone for the kind of relationship they would build. Spike Lee said he was honored upon learning about the Obamas' first date. Number 5. The film was selected for preservation. In the National Film Registry, Do the Right Thing indeed deserves all the recognition it's getting. In 1999, just a decade after its controversial and groundbreaking release, Do the Right Thing received one of the highest honors a film can achieve in the United States. The Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry. Each year, the National Film Registry selects a limited number of films deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Once selected, those films are preserved to ensure that future generations can study and experience them as part of the nation's artistic and cultural legacy. Most of the movies chosen tend to be decades old, so for Do the Right Thing to be selected just 10 years after its release was extraordinary. The film's preservation in the National Film Registry signaled that the establishment it had critiqued acknowledged its value. It's also worth noting that Do the Right Thing was one of the earliest films directed by an African-American filmmaker to receive this recognition. The selection also confirmed that Do the Right Thing revolutionized American leadership. Number 4. One scene took 8 hours to shoot, 250 to 258.
You don't suck on my box, man! Fuck that boy here! Now! Punch him in the grill right now!
One of the most intense scenes in Do the Right Thing was the confrontation between Radio Raheem and Sal over the Wall of Fame. It's the moment where the slow burn of racial tension combusts into open conflict, and it ultimately sets in motion the tragic events that lead to the demise of Raheem and the destruction of Sal's Pizzeria. Many viewers don't know that this critical scene took 8 hours to film. The scene begins with Raheem walking into Sal's Pizzeria. Instead of just ordering pizza, he confronts the absence of black faces on the wall of Sal's Pizzeria, which is located in a predominantly black neighborhood. Spike Lee understood the significance of this scene. It was more than the wall of photographs. It is about who gets represented, who gets honored, and who gets erased in American spaces. To capture the intensity, Spike insisted on shooting the scene from multiple angles, close-ups, over the shoulders, and wide shots, ensuring no twitch, glance, or line was lost. However, what extended the shoot was the emotional synergy on set. According to the cast and crew, Bill Nunn, who played Radio Raheem, and Danny Aiello, who played Sal, were so immersed in their roles that real tension began to build between takes. The actors didn't break character easily. They stayed in the moment, breathing heavily, sweating profusely, voices raw from yelling take after take. At one point, Aiello reportedly felt emotionally drained and had to step away to refresh himself. The result was one of American cinema's most uncomfortable, explosive, and powerful scenes. Number 3. The film was criticized by politicians. When Do the Right Thing was released in the summer of 1989, it came with an angry tone, unapologetically black. For many in the mainstream media and political class, it was terrifying. The fear was that the film might incite violence, particularly race riots. Prominent politicians, columnists, and even the sitting President of the United States expressed deep anxiety over what the film represented. One of the loudest voices of alarm came from Joe Klein, a political columnist for New York Magazine, who suggested that the film was socially irresponsible. Even David Denby, the film critic for New York Magazine, famously wrote, "If Spike Lee wants to be taken seriously as a social commentator, he shouldn't be encouraging people to throw garbage cans through windows." That quote explicitly refers to when Mookie, played by Lee himself, hurls a trash can through the window of Sal's Pizzeria, triggering the riot. Denby and others interpret the act as an endorsement of violence. The truth is, no riots followed the release of Do the Right Thing. History vindicates Lee. The film is now widely regarded as one of the most important cinematic works of the 20th century. Number 2. The ending sparked a heated debate. The ending of Do the Right Thing is not easily digestible. It doesn't offer neat closure or moral clarity. When Mookie, played by Spike Lee himself, throws a trash can through the window of Sal's famous pizzeria, triggering a riot that destroys the building, the act felt like a cinematic punch. Was it an act of justified protest or a betrayal? Some critics, especially white ones at the time of release in 1989, were visibly shaken by the conclusion. This was why they questioned whether the film endorsed violence or might incite riots. Others worried about the implications of black rage being directed at property. In interviews, Spike Lee challenged those who expressed more outrage about the pizzeria's destruction than about Raheem's demise. He famously asked, "Why are people more concerned about a window than a human being's life?" The question speaks to the very heart of the movie Do the Right Thing, a film that refuses to comfort, appease, or dilute its politics. Number 1. Spike Lee rewrote the ending after feedback. The ending of Do the Right Thing, where Mookie throws a trash can through the window of Sal's Pizzeria, has sparked a riot and has always been one of the hottestly debated conclusions in film history. Many viewers don't realize the ending we see today wasn't the original version. Spike Lee rewrote the ending during the development process after receiving critical feedback. Originally, he had envisioned that after Radio Raheem's tragic demise at the hands of the police, the crowd dispersed in grief and the film would end with a somber tone. As Lee shared the draft with peers and mentors, they told him the story didn't ring true without a real reaction to injustice. The pain of watching another black man murdered at the hands of the state couldn't simply dissipate into quietness. There had to be a consequence. Lee took that challenge seriously. That's when he conceived the scene in which Mookie, after standing in silence as police drag away Raheem's lifeless body, picks up a trash can and throws it through Sal's plate glass window. Rewriting the ending isn't just about sentiment, but ensuring the film reflects a reality millions live daily. What have you learned from these weird facts about Do the Right Thing? Share with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, explore the other videos on your screen.